Hey guys, Buildzoid here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a GTX 680 PCB. Why? It's old, it's like nobody cares. I just want to take a look at one. Also, one of you sent in photos of the VRM of the MOSFETs for this card. So I figured, well, since somebody actually, somebody else wants to see the video, it's not just... I know there's at least one person who will appreciate it. That's what I'm trying to get through my freaking mouth right now. Whoa, I English so good. Anyway, anyway, let's get on with this. This is KFA. This is the KFA2, or well, right now known as Galax, back then known as Galaxy, GTX 680 LTD OC. So this is like the hall. Basically, think of this as the Hall of Fame predecessor. It also has the white PCB that we now see on all of the Hall of Fame cards. And yeah, so it's a pretty cool card, and with that out of the way, let's get right into it. First things first, this right here is the memory VRM. And unfortunately, I have no... Well, I know exactly what MOSFETs these are. I mean, you can read that. That's a MDU 2653 from Magna Chip, and this isn't that legible, but this is a 2657. And unfortunately, there's no data sheets for these, so we basically, yeah, we just went over everything I know about this VRM right here. That's the MOSFETs it uses. It's a two-phase. It's powering the memory. It doesn't really have to do that much work, especially with GDDR5, which ran on like 1.5 volts, so it was even lower current than like GDDR5X, which runs on less voltage, but slightly higher current, so... Yeah, basically, no idea, like, no details on this, but it doesn't super matter. Then behind that, we find the Vcore Vrm, and this I have all the information I could possibly want on. So, with that, basically, we'll just look straight at it, because there are some minor VRMs around the card, but I can't find them on the photo. I mean, I think this is a 5-volt low dropout regulator. Also, do we have dual BIOS? What are these? Okay. No idea. I'd have to look at... Swear this should have dual BIOS. This is like a overclocking card. There's no buttons anywhere or switches, so I guess there's no dual BIOS. Well, that's pretty lame. Anyway, let's just go back to the Vcore Vrm, since that's really what I want to talk about here. So the Vcore Vrm is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 phase at first glance according to the inductors, and indeed it is a proper 8 phase because we also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drivers, and the voltage controller is a CHL 8318 located on the back of the card, which is why you don't see it right here. So yeah, it's a true 8-phase, and the one phase is basically 2 low-side MOSFETs and 1 high-side MOSFET. And I just realized I put Vcore right there. So the low-side MOSFET is a IRF 67725, and the... Oh, wait. Did I say low-side or did I say high-side? Now I forgot. Either way, the one it's pointing to is a 6725. That's not wrong. The high-side MOSFET is a IRF 6711. And basically, this MOSFET combination at the time, when this card was relevant, was super, super popular on high-end GPUs. So it was used on like reference HD 7970s would come with this. With these MOSFETs, there would be less of them. It'd be a 5-phase and only 1 low-side FET and 1 high-side FET. Some cards came with a... Well, the reference PCB for the 7970 is interesting in that it actually had a 6th phase on the PCB, and it was up to the manufacturers to decide if they wanted to use that extra phase. Some cards had that extra phase enabled, some cards didn't, but it was using these IR 6725 and 6711 MOSFETs. These are International Rectifier Direct FETs. Other cards that use these were the HD 7970 Lightning, I believe the 680 Lightning, the EVGA classified cards of that time period would use this MOSFET combination. The EVGA E-Power uses these MOSFETs. Basically, These are some really, really nice MOSFETs, and like there's a lot of high-end cards out there that use these because they're good. So yeah, the end result is that with the selection that, well, basically with the fact that there is 2 low-side MOSFETs per phase here and 1 high-side MOSFET in each phase on this card, Galax achieve, well, yeah, I'll call them Galax since that's what they're known as now. Basically, the end result is that this VRM, if you're doing sort of stock settings, which is 1.175 volts for this card, which you're looking at about so assuming a VRM, so I've changed my VRM rating methodology again. Actually, it's not really changed the methodology. It's more like I've just crammed more information. So for 300 kilohertz switching frequency and 125 degrees centigrade operating temperature, this VRM will do 1.175 volts, which is stock settings, 150 amps, while putting out about 13 watts of heat. It'll do 1.35 volts, which is like a heavy water-cooled overclock, 200 amps, and the current figure is based on calculations of my somewhat questionable overclocked power draw calculator. It's questionable in that it's accurate if I account for everything properly, it can get pretty accurate. But generally, I say 10% error margin, so plus minus 10% on that current draw figure right there. But 1.35 volts, about 200 amps, you're looking at about 24 watts of heat output. So really not bad. This VRM really comes with quite the beefy heatsink as well. And then if you're running liquid nitrogen and shoving serious amounts of voltage, like 1.65 volts, I'm not actually sure if that's safe for a 680, but I've run other Kepler architectures and I ran them up to like 1.7, so, you know, if it scales, just go for it. 1.65 volts, 300 amps, and I think actually your current draw will be lower because low operating temperatures drop current draw, but assuming the temperature for all of these is the same, you would actually hit that 300 amp figure. But 1.65 volts, 300 amps, you're looking at about 46 watts of heat output on the VRM. So again, not bad. So what's like the absolute like overload condition for this VRM? Well, I went for a slightly lower voltage just because you're never actually going to hit this current figure. But if for some reason the VRM went into a like short circuit, well, if you were trying to blow up this VRM and had it set to 1.3 volts, then 580 amps would produce about 140 watts of heat. And at 125 degrees, this current level would actually really, really quickly wear the VRM out and kill it. So, yeah, that would be like overload scenario. Obviously, it's not really a useful rating because it's completely uncoolable. But yeah, that's like the capabilities of the VRM. Completely utter, like, yeah, for a GTX 680, this is perfectly fine. It's actually overkill. You know, it's, yeah, it's overkill. There's not really much else to say about it for a 680. On liquid nitrogen or water cooling, there's basically no scenario in which a 680 will be able to overload this VRM right here. So, yeah. That's that. That covers the Vcore VRM. So now let's go take a look at the... Well, actually, so that covers the Vcore VRM, but now I'll point out that you do have this header right here, which is for hooking up a voltage control panel thingy, which you can't get, as far as I'm aware, if you're like general public. You have to work at Galax more or less to have access to it. But I do believe I read a post on a forum somewhere that says that this connector right here is actually a pinout straight for the vid pins of the CHL8318. So we'll take a look at that right now. This is the back of the card, and that right there is the voltage controller. So that is the... I just want to do one last check. Yeah, there really is no switch on this. Oh, it is Hall of Fame. It's funny. So they did actually call it the Hall of Fame. It's funny because the review on Tech Power Up is Yeah, LTD, so limit... I have no idea. They did settle on the... Yeah, it even says LTD OC over... LTOC over here. So... IDK. Well, they decided to call it Hall of Fame later. Anyway, this right here is the 8318. This is a voltage controller which uses a VID interface. Parallel VID, if I'm not mistaken, is the proper name for it. Basically, there's 8 pins on this thing, which, depending on if they're pulled high or if they're pulled low, the binary value, you can set like a 8-bit binary value with that, and that 8-bit value translates directly into a voltage. So if you want to set 1.65 volts or something, you would go like 11111. Except I don't think it's 11111. I think it's like 00001 or something like that. So basically, you can set the voltage with a dip switch and some resistors. And I do believe that that connector that we saw on the front of the card is actually hooked up directly to the pins. So if you have the card and you would like to get manual voltage control, you'd basically have to just measure from the vid pins, which let me quickly open up the data sheet. You might be like, Buildzoid, why aren't you doing multiple takes of this video instead of just like going like this through it? Here's the thing, my computer crashed doing the last take, so... And it's not my overclock, it's just stuff. I know exactly why it crashed, but it's just, yeah, I don't want to fix it. So, here's the data sheet. Basically, you want these pins. You'd basically measure from vid 0 to vid 7. So basically, you need to figure out what these are hooked up to. And if you pull these high and low, you can get the voltage up and to go up and down. And the actual vid table you'll be looking for is in the VR11 or the VR11.0 specs. So one of these two. You can actually look those up on Google. I don't have... Actually, I think I might have them downloaded. Well, let's see. VR 11? Intel? Huh, okay, that's interesting. I can't find it. Either way, you can find the vid table. It's available on the internet. It's not a huge issue to look that up. So, yeah. You can get voltage control that way. And now let's look at the other cool thing, which I think is just kind of cool. So one of these again. So that's a prodlyzer. It's basically a super... it's not like a super capacitor, because it's not really super... Like, it's not huge amounts of capacitance. But basically, this is a capacitor with a really, really good frequency response. So basically, it will block... It will... Well... I don't know if block is the right term. Basically, if you have voltage fluctuations at a lot of different frequencies in your, you know, in the voltage output from the VRM, you're going to have a lot of fluctuations because there's basically fluctuations caused by the VRM switching on and off, and then there's fluctuations caused by the changing power consumption of the GPU as it goes through the render cycle. So basically, the reason why these exist is they block a very large, like, they will, well, normal capacitors will, like, not work for certain frequency ranges. Like, say, polymer capacitors basically don't do anything for voltage fluctuations in the megahertz range. So putting more of them on the card wouldn't actually help the card overclock any better. But one of these actually has a frequency response range which is, like, super, super wide. It will do... I think the last time I saw a spec sheet for one of these, it was like from tens of thousands of kilohertz to up into the megahertz range. So these things will take care of a massive amount of voltage fluctuation all on their own. The downside to these things is you can't get them in a high endurance rating. The only rating they come in, as far as I'm aware, is 2,000 hours at 105 degrees. Which kind of sucks, because you can get capacitors rated up to 12,000 hours for 105 degrees. And then there's, like, ceramics, which basically never fail on their own. So, yeah, but it's kind of cool that it's included on the card here. And since, you know, yeah, it's a low endurance rating, but it's relatively far away from the actual hot part of the VRM, which would be right around here, because that's where all the MOSFETs are. And so it shouldn't really be running a very high temperature. So I don't think this will fail early on you. And even if it did... Galax have put a truckload of ceramics right here, right? And then they've also put polymers on both sides of the PCB, and then more ceramics in between those. And then you obviously have the capacitors right on the back of the GPU core. So, you know, if this were to fail, you might see a small reduction. Like, if this just got, like, aged to the point where it stops working, you might see, like, a small reduction in maximum overclock, but it shouldn't have a huge impact on the overclocking of the card. Though maybe on liquid nitrogen you would see, like, that's the thing, as you run higher voltage and higher loads, you'll actually, the impact of capacitors on a VRM gets more dramatic. So if you were running, like, liquid nitrogen, it might actually cost you a few megahertz more than it would cost you on air or water cooling. You could, like, maybe lose, like, if you lose 5 or 10 megahertz on air, then on liquid nitrogen it could translate to, like, 50 megahertz less. So, yeah. But I don't think this will actually fail, because 2,000 hours, 105 degrees on a GPU. This should be a relatively cool spot on the card, since it's relatively far away from the core. It's relatively far away from the VRM. There's no real heat generating components anywhere around it. So, yeah. It's a pretty cool card, and this is just a kind of cool device that I felt like talking about. So I just wasted a ton of your time talking about it. But yeah, the guy who has this card, I mean, it's a good card. I don't know what you really expected to see. This is a predecessor to the Hall of Fame. Of course, it's a good card. The Vcore Vrm is plenty overkill. I am kind of sad about the fact that I can't find a BIOS switch on this, though. Like, that would be a... Well, then again, you can't really mod BIOSes on NVIDIA cards as far as I'm aware, so... Yeah. That's it for this video. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below about anything I said wrong, or you feel like, you know, you get the idea. Comment section. You can use it. What else is there? Right. If you would like to support what I do here at Actually Hardcore Overclocking, I have a Patreon, a PayPal, and what else is there? Right, and there's the AHOC Junkyard. Basically, there's a link down in the description to all of those, and the Junkyard is basically me selling off hardware I've used on AHOC. And I've had just this weird idea. I have a bunch of GPU cores and, like, delidded CPUs hanging, you know, on the wall of death, as some people have started calling it, because it is mostly loaded with dead hardware, so I guess, you know, fitting name. But would people be interested in those? Because it's like, I know people make them into keychains, but it's just like, they're as far, in my eyes, they're completely worthless, which is why they're glued to the wall. So, yeah, that's a thing. Anyway, also, one last thing before you leave. I'm very, very strongly considering buying a Vega Founders Edition card. And, you know, I'm wondering if you all, since the way I see AHOC is like, I want this to, like, you know, I do content because you guys want it. So it's like, I can technically, the AHOC budget as of right now can accommodate a Vega Founders Edition. The problem is, if I go and buy a Vega Founders Edition, that's the AHOC budget of the last 6 months gone, I think. No, not 6 months. It's like 4, 3, something like that. Basically, I've been sitting on the AHOC budget because I've been in a dilemma of, like, I don't know what to buy, and Threadripper and all of the cool stuff is coming. Well, Vega just arrived. You can pre-order Founders Editions right now, and I'm, like, very, very tempted to just go and get the card. So basically, it'd be like a day or two after launch day, so that'd be the 27th of June, I'd be able to test a Vega. So I'm basically asking you guys if you're cool with me doing that. Because personally, I'm not sure if I should do it. You know, I can't make up my mind. On one hand, it's really expensive, but it's not like I can't afford to buy it. The problem is it would delay a bunch of other well, I don't think it would actually delay a bunch of other content, considering my ability to get through content, so yeah. And sorry about rambling about that too long, but anyway, if you know, Vega Founders Edition. Should I get it? Should I not get it? Leave your thoughts about that down in the comments below. And with that, thank you for watching, and goodbye.